In this episode of Home Theater Geeks, I profile the most extreme and most expensive home theater I've ever seen. So stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek. In this episode, I want to share with you the most extreme home theater I've ever seen. Sadly, it no longer exists. Its owner, Jeremy Kipnis, passed away in 2019. But in its day, it was the most outrageous and most expensive home theater in the world. I interviewed Jeremy, in fact, on episode 39 of Home Theater Geeks way back in 2010. We'll put the link to that in the show notes so that you can watch that episode if you like. He called his system the Kipnis Studio Standard, also known as the greatest show on earth. It was actually a laboratory to advance the state of the art. And he was a consultant and brought clients in to show them what was possible. So I want to start with the floor plan, which hints at what the room holds. The legend is located sort of around the drawing of the room itself. It has 9 Snell THX sub 1800 subwoofers. Actually, after this drawing was made, he upped it to 16 of those subs. 8 Snell THX Music and Cinema Tower speakers. 3 Snell THX LCR 2800 speakers, all 3 of which were reproducing the center channel. And he had 10 Murata ES103A super tweeters to reproduce ultrasonic frequencies, basically. You can also see in the diagram a couch and a coffee table in the center of it all. The room was 33 feet long by 26 and a half feet wide. And it had a sloping ceiling that went from 8 feet at the rear to 16 feet at the front. Now, the next view is from above the screen, and it reveals the staggering extent of the system. In addition to all the speakers I just mentioned, you can see a ring of Macintosh MC2102 tube amps, 30 in all. Also in the system are 2 Mark Levinson number 33H and 3 Crown Macro Reference Gold power amps. So there's a lot of amplification going on there. In the next shot, we can see the screen, which is a Stewart Snowmat screen measuring 18 feet by 10 feet. It's a laboratory grade screen with a gain of 1.0. So it's what's called unity gain, and it does not accentuate the light reflection in any way. It reflects exactly what's coming onto it very evenly. Now, in the next shot, we see a closer view of the 3 Snell THX LCR 2800 speakers that all reproduce the center channel, along with the Macintosh amps that drive them. And these are all Mac amps on highly sophisticated isolation stands. And the next graphic, you can see even a closer view of one of those Snell speakers and its Macintosh amp. These are all tube-based amplifiers. Jeremy was into the tube sound, which many audiophiles are, and so he invested in that. Now, the next graphic shows you a view of the left side of the room with 3 of the Snell, actually 6 of the Snell subwoofers. They're stacked one on top of each other into these huge columns of 2 each. And 2 of the Snell Tower speakers, one near the front and one as a surround speaker with a bunch of amps. And you can also see Jeremy's extensive vinyl collection in the shelves behind the speakers. I mean, that's thousands of albums right there. This also illustrates something I said in the last episode about center channel speakers. I was answering a question about center channel speakers, and Jason had also asked about surround speakers, and should the surround speakers be the same as the front, right, and lefts? And in this picture, you can see that Jeremy subscribed to the philosophy that, yes, they should be the same. And ideally, they should be, and he had the room to do it. Interestingly, though, as you saw in those pictures of the center channel speakers, they weren't the same. They were from the same company, undoubtedly tonally very well matched to the left and right and surround speakers, but they had to exist under the screen. I don't think it was a acoustically transparent screen.
Hi, I'm Leo Laporte, host of This Week in Tech and many other shows on the TWiT podcast network. Can you believe it? 2026 is around the corner. So this, my friends, is the best time to grow your brand with TWiT. Nobody understands the tech audience better than we do. We love our audience, and we know how to effectively message to them. We develop genuine relationships with brands, creating authentic promotions that resonate with our highly engaged community of tech enthusiasts. You know, over 90% of TWiT's audience is involved in their company's tech and IT decision-making. Can you believe that? 90%, 88% have actually made a purchase based on a TWiT post-read ad. No one comes close. We're the best at this. As one TWiT fan said, I've bought from TWiT TV sponsors because I trust Leo and his team's knowledge of the latest in tech. If TWiT supports it, I know I can trust it. You cannot buy trust like that. Well, actually, you can. You can buy an ad on TWiT. All our ads are unique. They're read live by our expert hosts, Micah Sargent, me. We simulcast all during the shows on our social platforms, so everybody can be watching live. You know, one of our customers, Haroon Mir, the founder of Thinks Canary, he's been with us since 2016. Since 2016, he said, we expected TWiT to work well for us because we were longtime listeners who, over the years, bought many of the products and services we learned about on various TWiT shows, and we were not disappointed. The combination of the very personal ad reads and the careful selection of products that TWiT largely believes in gives the ads an authentic, trusted voice that works really well for our products. 10 out of 10 we'll use again. Thank you, Haroon. We love you, and it's been 9 years. That's the proof, right? Partnerships with TWiT offer valuable benefits, including over delivery of impressions. You get presence on show episode pages, so there's a link right there that our audience can click on. We're in the RSS feed descriptions, a link there too, and social media promotion. Our full service team will craft compelling creative to elevate your brand and support you throughout your entire campaign. I work on the copy myself to make it authentic, to make it real. If you want to reach a passionate tech audience through a network that consistently over-delivers, please contact us directly. partner@twit.tv. That's the email address, partner@twit.tv. Let's talk about how we can help grow your brand, or just go to twit.tv/advertise for more information. I look forward to working with you. Thanks for listening.
So in the next graphic, we can see a closer view of one of the subs, two of them, two stacked on top of each other, and the towers with a Macintosh amplifier. In the next graphic, we can see the projection booth and the equipment room, which held all the gear. The main projector there at the top is a Sony SRX S110 professional projector capable of true 4K resolution, that is 4096 by 2160. Now, this was in 2008, I believe these pictures were taken. And 4K was not a thing yet, but he had it, at least in the projector. He didn't have any 4K sources, but the projector upscaled them. He also had a couple of Blu-ray players. He had a Sony Blu-ray player, a Toshiba HD DVD player, both of which I also had. HD DVD didn't last, but Blu-ray did. Those were the first of their types, in fact, the Sony BD-PS1 and the Toshiba HD XA1. He had a Pioneer Laserdisc player, a JVC DVHS video recorder, which recorded digitally. I had one of those as well. It was the only way to record high definition television at the time. He had a Sony PlayStation 3 console, a Mark Levinson number 51 DVD and CD player, and a SATA hard drive for serving content with a whopping 72 hours of HD content. That's exaggerate. I mean, that's sarcasm right there, because 72 hours is nothing these days. But, you know, that was 15 years ago, more than 15 years ago. Obviously, this is all very outdated equipment, and had Jeremy lived, I'm sure he would have upgraded to all the latest and greatest stuff in his theater. And I'm sure it would have been fully 8K by now with Dolby Atmos overhead speakers and everything else. So that would have been his dream, I'm sure. In the next graphic, we can see that his system was actually able to display 4 images at once, each of which I'm sure was 1080p high definition. So, you know, that was pretty cool. Now, the power requirements for this system were enormous. The amps themselves delivered over 11,000 watts, 11 kilowatts of power to the speakers. Now, this required some pretty sophisticated power at his house. He had 2 General Electric 13,000 volt, 800 amp step-down transformers sitting outside the house, which we can see in the next graphic. This was really quite astonishing to me, that he actually almost had a full power station at his house. All of the cabling was audiophile grade wire, and each component had a 40 amp cryogenically treated circuit breaker. I don't quite know what that means. Obviously, it means they were treated with cold somehow. But anyway, just the sight of those 2 step-down transformers outside his house is really quite something. In the final graphic, we see Jeremy and his wife, Carolina, sitting in their room in happier days, I'm sad to say. Jeremy was a great guy, very enthusiastic, really friendly. As you'll see if you go back and watch episode 39 of this very show, Home Theater Geeks, I interviewed him, and it was a real pleasure to do so. And I conversed with him on and off over the years until his very untimely passing, which I was very sad to hear about that. Now, speaking of the amps and the speakers, remember I mentioned those super tweeters and those huge subwoofers? That whole system, the frequency response, it was able to reproduce from 10 hertz to 100 kilohertz. Keep in mind that the human hearing range is 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. And for those of us who are adults, we can't hear up to 20 kilohertz by any means. It's lower than that. His system went from 10 hertz, infrasonic for sure, to 100 kilohertz, ultrasonic. And I would love to have heard that system with high resolution audio. We can't hear up above 20 kilohertz, or in my case, and in your case, probably not as high as 20 kilohertz. But there is some evidence to suggest that if you reproduce audio, if you record and reproduce audio at higher than 20 kilohertz, you can sense a difference. Now, is it worth the amount of money he spent? Well, I don't know. He spent $6 million. That system cost $6 million, which I believe the Guinness Book of World Records cited it as the most expensive theater in the world, home theater, for 2 or 3 years in a row. So, it's one man's passion, no question about it. And a lot of us have that passion. Very few of us have the resources to indulge it to that degree. But I wanted to show it to you because it's just so cool. Now, this system's been written about many times. You might well have seen it already. And as I mentioned, I interviewed Jeremy on this show in 2010. But I wanted those who might not have seen it before to see an example of true home theater extremism. Will we ever see anything like this again? Hard to say, but I would guess not. Jeremy and his Kipnis studio standard were one of a kind. And I hope you enjoyed taking a look. Now, if you have a question for me, send it along to htg@twit.tv, and I'll answer as many as I can right here on the show. And if you have a home theater, probably not as extensive as Jeremy's, but anything will do. If it gives you pleasure, I want to hear about it. Send me some pictures and a sentence or two about your room and what makes it special. And I'd like to start featuring the home theaters of listeners in my Home Theater of the Month episode, which I do every month. Think of that. And maybe I can even get you to come on the show. We can talk about it. You can show us around your theater with your phone on Zoom. It could be a lot of fun. So if you're interested, send me an email to htg@twit.tv, and I look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, geek out.